Dr. Christina Chen, a geriatrician and internist at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. In this episode, we are talking about aging well in our skin. And today, our guest is Dr. Saranya Wyles. She is a dermatologist and research chair at the Mayo Clinic Center for Aesthetic Medicine, and she has done incredible research in areas such as tissue engineering, 3D bioprinted skin, regenerative dermatology, and the science of skin aging and wound healing through the lens of cellular aging. She is a rock star in so many ways, and we are so happy to have you here, Dr. Wyles.
Thanks, Christy. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would just love to know how you became interested in dermatology, particularly in the space of regenerative medicine. We'd love to hear your background there.
We were nerds when we were growing up, my sister and I, and absolutely loved science. And the idea of regeneration really fascinated me. From axolotls to salamanders, we have these animals where you can cut off their limbs and they would regrow fully. So I'd always been thinking about regeneration and regenerative medicine as magic growing up because this was superhero stuff. So when I was graduating college, I went to work at the Harvard Stem Cell Institute. The whole world was captivated by the idea you can make patient-specific skin cells or stem cells. And that really, started my journey in regenerative medicine. And in medical school, I had another great mentor who showed me the potential of dermatology and what a great way to study regenerative medicine through the lens of the skin. The skin regenerates every month, so it's a naturally regenerative organ. So that's sort of how the two came to be a perfect marriage.
Yeah, that's amazing. And this is really the future. So it's really neat to see you kind of paving that way in that route of innovation. And today we're talking about skin and the aging skin in particular, and just like any other organ, the skin ages. Can you just start with the basics? How does the skin change as we age?
So I think about the skin as cake layers. So it's not just the outside layer. There's actually 3 layers that are really important. The epidermis, which is the outside most layer of the skin, then the dermis, which is sort of the scaffold or the main collagen producer of the skin. And then we have the adipose tissue, which is the fat tissue that's right underneath it. As we age, each of these layers age differently. And that's really important because the skin does a lot of different things. Beyond serving as this barrier to infection and the external environment, it also serves as a thermoregulator, which is basically how we regulate heat and temperature control. It's the body's most active producer of oils and other glands. So it's a really great exocrine tissue. And it also can absorb a lot of things that's topically applied. And it's a great organ that can sense. So this is how we communicate love and touch and perception and heat, danger, and all those sensations change with age, affecting each of those layers.
So every layer is different. And so we need to be mindful that each layer has its own role in working together to keep our bodies functional. And it's so amazing that we don't realize how much skin affects our quality of life until something happens to it. And it's like, I've been living in the skin for so long, and all of a sudden it's just not working anymore. So we know that the sun has direct impact on our skin health, but what are the other environmental influences on our skin health?
Absolutely. Believe it or not, only 25% of how we age, especially in the context of the skin, is genetically determined. That means 75% is determined by extrinsic factors outside of genetics. So these include environmental factors, everything from UV radiation, as you pointed out, to our diet, to our nutrition, through other toxins, alcohol, smoking, etc. And secondhand smoke exposure is another important thing to mention there. Radiation, thinking about different exposures, thinking about different microbiomes or environments that affect how our skin stays moisturized and humidified, but also can change with different exposures in different cities, whether you're in a rural or in a urban setting. So all these factors can affect how our skin ages. And I think one of the most underestimated exposures is probably our visible light. So we don't think about it a lot, but our cell phone use, our computer use, all of those emit blue light, and they can actually exacerbate certain skin conditions like melasma. So being very careful and using blue light protectors can also help protect the skin.
I did not know that. Interesting. And are there differences in skin aging between different people? Like, men and women or different skin tones?
Absolutely. So there's definitely sex differences. So for instance, men have more sebaceous glands, so they have oilier skin. They also have thicker skin. Women actually, in some studies, they say they have more collagen. So in the dermis, there's more collagen to support the dermis and aging over time, the elasticity that the dermis has to obtain.
And what about with different skin tones?
So in the epidermis, if we think about the most prominent cell there affected with age is called melanocytes. These are pigment-producing cells. And this can be different in a fair-skinned individual or a dark-skinned individual. And there's about a 15% decline in these pigment-producing cells every decade of our life. So that means that if you are an individual that starts off with higher melanin pigmentation, that protection is there for you longer. And this is why we see things like skin cancers more predominantly affecting our fair-skinned individuals. Right. So melanin is an important factor to think about with how we age.
And how about just in general as we age? What are the most common types of skin disorders that we see?
When it comes to skin, there's the skin structure and more importantly, the skin function. And we talked a little bit about barrier function and its function as a thermoregulator. Yeah. But the other role that the skin can really have is keeping moisture in. So the two common conditions that we see in older adults is dry skin. Yeah. Which gives way to itchy skin. So dry skin and itchy skin are quality of life influencers. If you have dry skin, you're going to naturally want to itch. And if you itch that dry skin, then you initiate something called the itch-scratch cycle. Something's itchy, you scratch it, that causes it to be more itchy. So keeping that skin barrier integrated and intact so that you're not losing water. You know, I often hear patients say, I haven't changed anything about my skin routine. How come I have more dry skin now? How come I have to apply lotion now? And that's because as we age, we naturally lose that ability of how quickly the skin turns over. And then we also lose those barrier proteins. So instead of staying structurally intact, it can start to lose water more than at baseline.
Yeah, dry skin for sure. And then I feel like every day when I look in the mirror, I feel like I see a new spot pop up and I'm just like, is that what's normal and what's not, And so that's a common question is how can we differentiate normal aging skin and age spots from a possible underlying skin disease or a skin problem?
This is a great question. I think mostly understanding that this is on a spectrum. Yeah. So once you start seeing those age spots, so you can ask, well, why now? Why did I get all of a sudden this spot? I never had this before. And that's partly because we lose pigment producing cells 15% per decade. So previously, those pigment producing cells make something called eumelanin, which is a really important protective melanin pigment. So when we lose that protective melanin pigment, we become more susceptible to getting stress-induced or oxidative stress-induced damage. And the pigment is now haphazardly produced, or there's irregular pigment that wouldn't have otherwise been occurring. And the other aspect of that is our immune system, which previously could account for some of that damage and erase it, is no longer optimally functioning. It's known as immune aging. Right. So I think collectively, all of these things going together, we start to see these spots, which can then predispose you to other conditions. Like, can a sun damaged spot later lead to skin cancers? This is where we have to be really vigilant. And if you have family history and high sun exposure growing up and risk factors, definitely going to see your dermatologist on a regular basis to get those spots screened early to have early detection and prevention is important.
I see. And, there are primary skin issues that can surface, but also secondary skin issues, I suppose, from pre-existing chronic illnesses such as diabetes or other types of chronic diseases. Can you speak a little bit to that, of what types of skin issues we often see in the setting of other chronic diseases?
Absolutely. So diabetes, you mentioned in particular, 1 in 3 diabetics have a skin-associated problem. So that could be anything from perception, where they lose their ability to sense their environment. It could also be nodules on their skin called prurigo nodularis, or more susceptible to things like dry skin and itchy skin. And this is due to a lot of systemic factors. But keeping that in mind, I think the skin's really a very good telescope, if you will, to understanding systemic aging and systemic inflammation. So the skin does a great job of giving you clues. So if you're starting to notice these skin conditions, more eczema, more dry skin, differences in your skin, loss of sensations, etc., that's good reason to go see a dermatologist.
You mentioned earlier about just general loss of collagen elasticity, and that seems like a progressive thing. Are there ways to either slow that down or support these changes that happen?
Absolutely. I mean, we lose about 1% collagen per year after we hit 20. So this is an important question. I mean, I think you go walk into your drugstore and there's all these products that are talking to you about skin, hair, and nails. And as a consumer, which one do you decide to buy? They all sound so exciting because you want to be getting ahead of the collagen and things like that. But, there's very little studies to support things like collagen supplementation. What we do see in these collagen supplements is that it's a great source of protein. And protein is important for overall healthy living. So I think it's definitely providing some support, but you have to be cautious to what degree does that actually have implications for the skin. Topically, we know there's antioxidants. So just protecting yourself from external influences. Vitamin C has gotten to be quite a popular topical product as an antioxidant. Vitamin C is also a collagen cofactor. So you need vitamin C to start making collagen, which is why people can actually use vitamin C twice a day. You're making collagen even at nighttime. And then, of course, sunscreen to prevent against a lot of these influences of UV radiation. And I always talk about a tinted sunscreen because the tint helps add a layer of protection against visible light, especially for patients that are prone to having melasma or have melasma, and iron oxides in there can be really helpful.
So UV rays have influence on collagen as well?
Yes, so collagen specifically, because the UV rays can penetrate into the dermis, the second layer, and we have damage there, what we call solar elastosis, or damage of the collagen fibers.
Okay.
So in a lot of these studies that are using skin actives, they look at that top layer of the dermis and see how much of the solar elastosis or sun-related damage of the dermal collagen is reversed. So the good news is that it can be reversed. You can give the skin the right signals to start making collagen again.
So just to clarify for our listeners, a skin active is a specific ingredient for your skincare product. And so it's scientifically proven to really target and address a particular skin concern and works on a cellular level to improve your skin's appearance and health. This is a really good reminder that I need to be more diligent with my sunscreen application as well. Speaking of which, what would you say are the top most important considerations for our skin from a maintenance perspective?
I think when talking about skin health, I want to reiterate the importance of understanding both structure and function. So having said that, what's the most simple thing you can do? Here are 3 steps. The first and probably the highest priority is sunscreen. If you're not a diligent sunscreen user, I always say leave the sunscreen in your car, because in Minnesota, where we live in, most of our sun exposure, at least in the wintertime, comes from driving to and work or being in the car, right? So even if you're forgetting to apply it in the beginning of the day, at least you have protection to put some on the backs of your hands and the face and the neck, so that those high-risk area for skin cancers, high-risk area for other skin insults and skin damage can be protected. And then the second is a good antioxidant. So what does that antioxidant mean? Honestly, it's a big umbrella category. So it's not just vitamin C. I mentioned vitamin C previously. There's a lot of different types of vitamin C. Know that some of the vitamin C can expire after a certain time. So different vitamin Cs can oxidize when exposed to air. So just being mindful of getting a new vitamin C. It doesn't have to be the most expensive on the market, but something that can be used and repurchased 2 or 3 times a year so that you're avoiding that risk of expired or damaged products. So beyond vitamin C, there's a lot of peptides that have entered the market that are fantastic and have really good ingredients for antioxidant effects. And then the last ingredient that I mentioned is a retin-A. So retin-A, or over-the-counter retinol, is a fantastic producer of collagen. It's been around for years, decades, and it's tried and true. It can give you really good effects of keeping that skin renewed and turning over. There was a clinical trial that compared a CO2 full face laser to the most, over the counter, like a weaker product. And they found that consistent use of an over the counter retinol was at par with a full CO2 laser one time in office. So consistency is really key, and you can really get a lot of benefits from an over the counter product like that.
That's great.
So sunscreen, antioxidant, retinol or retin-A.
How about just day-to-day habits, like our hydration, nutrition, sleep, and smoking? Like all these behaviors and habits have long-term outcomes on skin health.
So one thing that you said there, I think stands out that we probably undervalue, and that's sleep. People know about hydration. They know drinking water helps keep good skin. Then eating a Mediterranean nutritional diet helps too. But sleep is so underemphasized. And I'm a culprit myself. I don't always do the best job of getting my full 8 hours. So sleep plays a huge role in how our skin functions. Really getting that good sleep in, try to get to sleep at a certain reasonable amount of time, reducing those external device uses before getting to sleep so that your mind is at rest and can go into sleep cycles faster. And I think we're just learning about things like the skin microbiome, which is how the environment affects the skin, is affected by sleep. So just like we would have thought with nutrition and hydration, the gut microbiome and the skin microbiome are connected. Now we're learning that there's actually a skin gut brain axis. There's actually connections to how sleep and its function is affecting how the skin's functioning.
I feel like we keep making more and more discoveries along the way. And so, as we're talking about poor sleep and how that can affect our skin, I'm also wondering if it can be this vicious cycle too, where your skin health can also affect your sleep.
I have a lot of patients that come in because they're starting to notice their skin function changes. So now they can't sleep well because they have itchy skin or dry skin. So I think talking about sleep quality and how important sleep contributes to skin health, it's a cycle, right? If you have itchy skin, you're itching, you're not sleeping well, it wakes you up in the middle of the night. So within 5 minutes of getting out of the shower, putting on a good moisturizer will just set you up for really good skin health.
I love how we are just sort of bringing it back to the core of the whole skin span concept, which is basically referring to your skin's overall health and lifespan, right? Because to be clear, it's not just about looking good. It's about feeling good in our skin and preventing infections, keeping our barrier protection in good shape. And, our skin really just impacts how we feel. And so I love how we're reframing why we're doing this. It's not just about looking 20 years old for the rest of our lives, but it's really about how it adds to our health span and our quality of life just in general.
Absolutely. And I mean, this speaks to even my patients in my aesthetics practice. These are patients coming in and they're saying, I'm looking for a promotion in my job. And my colleagues are asking me when I'm going to retire. So these are patients that want to build confidence. Taking good care of your skin and skin health is a huge influence of your mental health and your confidence. So in thinking about how older adults live, it gives them a lot of sense of purpose again. And like you were saying, it's about feeling well.
Love that. So I'm curious what you would say to someone who may not really care about their appearance, not worried about getting a promotion. What would you say to this person about why skincare is still important for them?
It's really important to be mindful of skin health for a variety of reasons. One being the susceptibility to skin cancers, especially if you have a skin cancer in sun-exposed areas like your face or the backs of your hands. A lot of times these high-risk cancers require a surgery called Mohs surgery, which is quite involved, and it could really be prevented. The most common type of cancer is skin cancer, and the most preventable type is non-melanoma skin cancer. It's really important to use sunscreen. And if you're not into applying something that can feel like it's heavy on your skin, there's a lot of different options out there now. Sunscreens that can feel like really light moisturizers. If you don't want to wear anything at all, there's sun protection measures. UPF clothing, wearing a hat, a wide-brimmed hat that can protect other areas like the back of your neck.
Dr. Wyles, I'd love to hear more about your experience as a practitioner who works in regenerative skincare. Do you have any patient examples of successful stories where they have really found benefit from your recommendations and were really able to turn their life around in some way?
So one of my favorite stories is a patient who grew up on a farm and all her life was exposed to sun and was actively working outdoors, and came in to see me in her mid to late 60s and was trying to find a way to keep her skin more age appropriate and functional because she had a lot of sun damage. She was so nervous that she was going to get a skin cancer, and that she had a lot of skin cancer history in her family. And we did a couple of things. We started her on a good skincare regimen, and then we did a CO2 laser procedure. And she came back and she said, I had an event with my family. We went to my daughter's wedding and it was unbelievable for her. And she said, I'd invested in, taking care of my kids my whole life and doing different activities for them. And now at her daughter's wedding, she had a moment where her daughter looked at her and said, I'm so glad you did this for yourself, Mom. It's time you took care of yourself. So I think that really stood out. And it's like, we often don't prioritize ourselves, especially as mothers. At some point, you'll look in the mirror and say, okay, now it's my turn.
I love that story. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah, I feel like that story has a sentiment of, it's never too late. And you may feel like, oh, I already have the wrinkles. My skin's already sagging. There's nothing more than I can do. But that's not really true.
Exactly. So it's not just about wrinkles. So I had another patient who was affected by a dog bite, and it was considerable trauma for her. And she'd lived with this for years. And we worked on that scar for her for nearly a year. We did different things with lasers, injectables, topicals. And, I think towards the end, she had about a 60% improvement. You can't achieve 100% with scarring. It's not possible. Once the skin scars, it's nearly impossible to reverse it to its full native skin state. But in this patient, we were able to restore about 60%, structure, but also function. She really felt that when she smiled, she had a more even smile, and she felt comfortable being in photographs again. So again, that quality of life for these patients can be significant.
Yeah. Do you know of any other innovations out there that's being developed, or other emerging nutraceuticals, technology developments, or supplements even that are being innovated in this space?
I think we're at a really exciting point where we are seeing the convergence of regenerative medicine and longevity science. So what I mean by that is we've had these tools now of regenerative medicine toolkit. We knew that they would help fuel regeneration or growth and kind of restore damage. And then you meet that with longevity science or aging science where you're seeing damage. So why do we age? How do we age at that molecular level? So looking at those two fields, one as the source of regeneration or source of growth, and the other as a source of damage, source of injury. And then you build them so that you can see how they fit together and how they can better work together. So I kind of talk about this as like, if you're gardening, you have to take the weeds out of the garden and then you can plant the seeds. But, I think it's still early of what works and doesn't. There's exciting science. There's a lot of really good work on looking at longitudinal aging, especially through skin, how these different treatments can affect the skin, right? And I think that's where we just have to wait to see how the science lends its way forward.
Yeah, very cool. And just quickly about skin cancer, I think the best method is still prevention at this point. But are there any new emerging technologies or innovations in the space of treating skin cancers or preventing skin cancer?
There's two new exciting things that have emerged. So beyond sunscreen and sun protection, sun protective clothing, which is called UPF clothing, there are vitamins. So there was a New England Journal of Medicine study that actually looked at vitamin B3 or niacinamide and how taking that vitamin supplement can help reduce the risk for developing skin cancers. And then the second concept is non-ablative fractionated laser. So there's a laser called the Fraxel laser, which is the brand name for it, but it can help prevent skin cancers. And there was a recent study that was published in a journal called Dermatologic Surgery, where they looked at patients after having Fraxel treatments and found about a 50% reduction in getting non-melanoma skin cancers in the period of time that they followed them. So it's a huge impact on these patients, but right now it's not covered by insurance. It's an out-of-pocket cost. But for the patients that can or are interested in doing this type of laser twice a year, it makes sense because it can help reduce the precancers and help increase the skin turnover.
More to come on all that.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the perfect way to segue into kind of what you're doing in the field of regenerative medicine. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing?
We've been successfully partnered with tissue engineers, creating new platforms where we can better understand skin products and skin testing and new drugs that are coming about.
Yeah.
And so specifically what I'm talking about here is something called a 3D bioprinted skin. So we have created a fully human model. So everything from the keratinocytes to melanocytes to the dermis, we even have the human collagen-based products. So the FDA has reviewed this platform and given us the go ahead to use this as an alternative to animal testing. So we have now an ability to do these testings and understand through the lens of 3D bioprinted skin.
How did you do that? Like, did you just build that?
I mean, it's very sci-fi. It's a huge 3D bioprinter. And just like your printer that you would print different, inks, we have different bioinks. So fibroblasts, melanocytes, keratinocytes, those are different inks like you would have like cyan, magenta, black. And these different bioinks are loaded. And then we would print them at different densities. And I think something that's really exciting that's coming about is we're actually trying to make these patient-specific avatars. So we would have models that would represent different patient conditions, different patient genetics, and we kind of have ways to map patients' skin blueprint, if you will.
That's so amazing. That's really exciting. I think you've just done such amazing things in your field, really paving the way of innovation.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I think I'm truly a product of great resources and opportunity, and Mayo Clinic has really lended itself to such great environment that is conducive to innovation.
Well, last question I have for you. What do you personally do to age well? And what does aging forward mean to you?
Aging forward to me means striving towards optimal skin health, the concept of skin span, your optimal skin health over time. I think we need to be thinking about taking care of our skin similarly to how we take care of our teeth. We brush our teeth every day. There's no great before and after picture. It's just you do it as a preventative measure, right? So you do it so that you're not getting cavities or other decay over time. So in that similar way, proactive skincare is really important. And for me, that means in the morning, gentle cleanser, washing my face, using different products, and then alternating them. So I do something called skin cycling. So you don't have to always use all products every single day, all the time, right? Because then that gets overwhelming. Some days, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll do some products, and Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I'll do others. And then you can have a ritual, like once a week, you can do a really good I use glycolic acid peel pads to kind of stay on top of skin turnover and a light peel at home. So there's a lot of things like that. And I think staying hydrated when you can, when you remember.
And getting enough sleep.
And getting enough sleep. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Wyles, for being here today and just helping us all learn about our skin health. And most importantly, just how do we live well in our skin and how do we feel our best. We appreciate you being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Christy.
So that's all for this episode. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more informed, inspired, and empowered. If you have a topic suggestion for a future episode, you can leave us a voicemail at 507-538-6272, and we might even feature your voice on the show. For more Aging Forward episodes and resources, head to mayoclinic.org/agingforward. And if you found this show helpful, please subscribe and make sure to rate and review us on your podcast app. It really helps others find our show. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious and stay active.